Okay. I'm doing a little abbreviated intro there because I'm starting a little late today. Sorry about that. But we're all here. Hello. How are you? We're live on Rockfin. We're live on Callin. We're live on YouTube. And good to see you all hanging out. Thanks for hanging out with me on a Sunday. And welcome. And wait, somebody's birthday. Obsolete Optics, is it your birthday? Nice. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Obsolete Optics. Right on. If I were there, I'd buy you a drink. All right. Well, yeah. Hope you're enjoying the day so far, or try to do something nice for yourself, or bully somebody else to do something nice for you. I don't know. I don't know. Whatever it takes. Hopefully, there's somebody that's doing something nice for you today. All right. Let's let's get into it. Oh man, I was gonna talk about Pfizer stuff, and I am, but I saw this really interesting article right before the show, and I was like, oh Jesus, I guess I got to talk about this one. I didn't even know this was happening. Did you guys know this was happening? The Cop City in Georgia, and there's protests there, and there's like environmental protests in Georgia happening, and they're cracking down on these environmental protesters. We're gonna learn about it a little today. If you don't know, yeah, the restaurant scene was amazing. Lone Wolf, you're right. I want to talk about that. I don't know if I have the restaurant scene. I think they blocked the video, but if somebody has a link to that video, I would love to have a link to that video of the restaurant scene. But I don't know if I'm even going to have time to play it today. I feel like I've been pushing this story back for days, and now it's almost old news. But that's all right. We'll talk about it. Cop City, what is it? The crackdown on Cop City protesters is so brutal because of the movement's success. So there's a protester that's been killed, and 20 were charged under a domestic terror law in Georgia. And Georgia's governor gave himself broad emergency powers. Has anybody heard about this? Because of the success. Damn their success. Anyways, listen to this. The movement to stop the construction of a $90 million police training center atop vast acres of Atlanta forest has been extraordinarily successful over the last year. This is like a Dakota Access Pipeline, protest, but nobody's really talking about it. I mean, I'm amazed, and I'm also appalled that nobody's talking about that. This isn't a news story that people are talking about. Actually, I heard about this from Steven Donziger, was the poster of this story, and I want to know why climate, protesters being jailed and killed and called terrorists, why that isn't concerning to journalists, to alternative journalists. I want to know why that is, because it it's a thing that's happening, and it's an atrocity, and it's an oppression from the state. right? And we hear about all the other kinds of oppression, and but somehow this slips through the cracks. These kinds of stories. Um, so we're talking about it here because I haven't heard anybody talking about this anywhere else. So, yeah. With little national fanfare, Defend the Atlanta Forest Stop Cop City activists nimbly deployed. This is from The Intercept, by the way. Nimbly deployed a range of tactics. So thank you, Intercept, for covering this story. I appreciate that. They nimbly deployed a range of tactics: encampments, tree sits, peaceful protest marches, carefully targeted property damage, local community events, investigative research, and at times direct confrontation with police forces attempting to evict protesters from the forest. The proposed militarized training compound known as Cop City has thus far been held at bay. The Atlanta-based movement should be seen as an example of rare staying power, thoughtful strategizing, and the crucial articulation of environmentalist politics situated in anti-racist, indigenous, and abolitionist struggle. Unsurprisingly, however, significant national attention has only been drawn to the forest defenders in the last week, thanks to the extreme law enforcement repression they are now facing. You know that climate activists all over the world are being labeled terrorists. You know that climate activists all over the world are being killed, brutalized, right? Broken up. It's not, I want to stop hearing that anybody who's involved in climate change protests or climate justice, I want to stop hearing that all those people are somehow funded by Bill Gates. They are not, okay? And that is bullshit. That's just political. That is just political siloing. That's, my side-isms. And, I wish people would stop it. It's really, it really sucks. And it's bad journalism, too. Unsurprisingly, however, significant national attention, I read that. A forest defender was killed by police last Wednesday. And a total of 19 protesters now face capricious and ungrounded domestic terror charges for their involvement in the movement. A rare deployment of a state domestic terror statute, threatening to exhaust and crush a resilient and developing movement. On Thursday, Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp announced a state of emergency in response to the protests in downtown Atlanta in the week following the killing of the protester. The executive order grants the governor's office extensive and preemptive repressive powers, including the ability to call on as many as 1,000 National Guard troops to quell protests at any moment. This is an unprecedented level of repression, said Marlon Kotz, 38, an Atlanta-based organizer with the Atlanta Solidarity Fund, which provides bail funds and legal support to protesters who are targeted for involvement in social movements, including against Cop City. At this point, the police seem to be charging every protester they arrest with domestic terrorism. Yeah, and I know they're doing that to people on the right as well, right? They are doing that to protesters on the right. They're doing it to people on the left. We are fighting the same forces, the left and the right. And they are definitely against people who really, really want to who really want to defend the earth and defend, and want to seek some climate justice or seek some kind of action, in the face of an ongoing climate catastrophe, right? At this point, the police seem to be charging I read that. The other pattern we've noticed is that they are charging everyone arrested on a given day with all crimes which happened that day. Yikes. Couts told me by way of example that during a protest in which a police car was burned, all arrestees from the day now face arson charges. Needless to say, the law doesn't work this way, so we interpret this as a strategy of blatant, malicious prosecution. The Defend the Atlanta Forest movement endeavors to combine the tactics of and to learn from previous struggles, including the 2016 encampments of Standing Rock, right, and the 2020 George Floyd uprisings, while experimenting with novel resistant compositions. The escalatory response from police and prosecutors, on the other hand, reveals a new and troubling combination of counterinsurgent strategies. The forest defenders have already faced months of aggressive policing and intimidation, which escalated into deadly violence during a multi-agency raid last Wednesday. Police shot and killed 26-year-old Manuel Tortuguita Terán. The authorities claim that Tortuguita shot at them first, wounding an officer. A narrative fiercely challenged by fellow activists and family members. Protests and vigils sprung up nationwide demanding justice for Tort, while mainstream environmental organizations, including Greenpeace and the Sierra Club, alongside left-wing representatives Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib, condemned the police's violence and called for an independent investigation into the activist killing. Up until this point, they had said little about the year-plus long struggle against Cop City. So they're jumping in there. Yeah, we care about this. Right, but it's been going for a while, and they haven't said anything. And this is just to make them look like they care. I'm sick of these people tweeting. I'm sick of Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib and all the other supposed progressives doing a lot of, fancy tweets out there. Please stop tweeting and start doing something. Actually stand up against power. Thanks so much. As forest defenders mourn and seek justice for their fallen friend, the movement must also find a barrage of excessive criminal charges. Must fight a barrage of excessive criminal charges, which notably state domestic terrorism charges carrying a possible 35 years in prison. Since December, the police have repeatedly stormed the forest with military-grade weapons, pointed assault rifles at protesters, fired chemical weapons at tree sitters, and used chainsaws in an attempt to dismantle tree houses with tree sitters still in them. Jesus. Said Elias, a 24-year-old Atlanta-based student in the movement who asked to withhold his full name for fear of police harassment. Their decision to create a dangerous, volatile, chaotic situation has led to the murder of our friend Tortuguita. Elias told me the police are trying to justify their negligence by charging people with domestic terrorism. However, nothing these protesters have done even remotely resembles domestic terrorism, but whatever you do it doesn't matter. Any challenge of the state now falls under the umbrella of domestic terrorism, or right, or threatening actions, hate crime, or hate speech. So all of those terms don't mean anything anymore. Anyways, the terror charges all handed down within the last 2 months were not from nowhere. Political and business interests behind Cop City have been pushing related rhetoric for well over a year. Communications records uncovered by activists between Cop City supporters, local self-identifying quote-unquote stakeholders, right, business owners, council members, and Atlanta law enforcement officials show that these parties have been calling the protesters eco-terrorists since at least last April. Though no one has yet been convicted on these bogus terror charges, Kemp, the governor, has readily used the term domestic terrorist to describe the arrestees. Kemp has also invoked the tired trope of outside agitators to delegitimize an Atlanta-based movement which has made a point to invite activists to join from out of state. Notably, recognition that Atlanta's stands was stolen in the 1800s from the Muskogee people, or Muskegee, I don't know, whichever way you pronounce that. The forest protest encampment has been host to dozens of visitors from around the country who descended from the displaced indigenous community. All right, that's all I'm going to read of that. But I just wanted to talk about this or cover the story because that's some it's wildness. And this is, like the Dakota Access protests and like the Enbridge pipeline protests, they're being stomped down by the boot of the state. And so, if they're all funded by Bill Gates or, backed by the WEF, I don't think that would be happening. They'd probably be There'd probably be a lot more support for these kind of actions, but no, there's not. There's actually just militarized police crackdown. So, wrong on that point. Anyways, that's a crazy situation, and we're going to. Denver says cops kill people and jail the victims they victimized. That's the Georgia I know. Okay, yeah. Oh, thanks for the link, Drag Eye. I appreciate that. Nice. Thanks for the link. Yeah, it's a wild story. I'm going to talk about it more. I'll be covering it, some more as it goes forward. But, we face the wholesale destruction of our planet and our environment at the hands of corporate industrial interests, and they are not going to let people get in the way of that continued destruction, even though they say the words, "Oh, climate change, we got to do something about climate change." They're not really going to do anything about climate change. They're just saying that to placate the people that are like, what are you going to do about the climate change? Or what are you going to do about the destruction of the planet? That's all they're doing, is placating you with the words that say that they care, just like, all the squad or the fraud squad, whatever you want to call them. Yeah. But, ignore the perils of the onslaught of industrial civilization on the planet. Ignore that at your own peril. And face, looking stupid later, I guess. Or, or looking like a hypocrite when you're like, oh, I really care about this. When it suddenly becomes an issue that is kind of obvious. Anyways. So let's move. Okay, so I'm going to, I was going to cover that. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And I was going to talk about this other story, but I'm going to leave that for tomorrow. And I think what we're going to do, I'm going to jump off of YouTube kind of early today, guys, so we can talk about these videos that came out and some other things, surrounding it, this subject that I've been neglecting. Before we do that, I don't know, I haven't checked on my coffees yet today. If anybody has donated to the channel, it's a good way to support the channel, is buymeacoffee.com/blackbearnews. And I did receive a tip on Rockfin, and thank you. Osama says, wishing a happy birthday and thanks to Obsolete Optics. Word up. Thanks for the support, and once again, happy birthday to Obsolete Optics. Let's see. Here's a I don't know. There's also Venmo links and a Cash App link in the description box. Also, if you want to support the channel that way, that's another way to do it. All right. Okay. YouTube tips also very cool. All right, YouTubers. Obsolete Optics says, what are you going to do about climate change and the destruction of the planet? Simple. Change it faster and destroy it more until there's nothing left for anyone. Must go faster. Step on the gas. All right, y'all. We're going to jump off of YouTube and go to Rockfin and Colin exclusively. Thanks for hanging out here, YouTubers. I'll see you again tomorrow at the